Hello and happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. In this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm. I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Terry Euell. Terry, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, that's great. So we were talking about all kinds of crap before we went live, and I developed all kinds of questions. And one of the things I wanted to ask about that was intriguing that you said was about knowing Bob Kerwood, the legendary host from Foster's.
Great guy.
Yeah.
He was certainly one of a kind.
Yeah.
For me, I started working there, I think I was either 8th or 9th grade. Started as a dishwasher. Worked my way up to the back room, prep cook, and got on the line a little bit. I'm not going to say he's the reason I became a chef, but he's definitely the reason why I wanted to be in the restaurant business.
Right.
Basically just watch this guy on a Friday night in awe. I mean, back then in the 80s, you had two restaurants. You were either going to Foster's, or if you had a special occasion, you're going to Beekman Arms.
Right.
Foster's on a Friday night, the line went out the door, down that sidewalk between Foster's and the Star Theater, all the way into the parking lot. I mean, we would bang out 200-300 covers on a Friday night.
Right.
And Bob would come in, yelling and screaming, let's go, let's go. He'd get on the line, he'd be cooking. Next thing you know, he's over helping us do dishes. He'd be in the back room prepping, running out to the dining room to bust tables and set tables. He'd jump behind the bar and help the bartenders out. He was everywhere.
Wow.
He was an incredible guy.
And so what part of how he was made you think, I want to do this?
He was just everything, and the nice thing about the restaurant business in general is there's never a dull moment.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a lifestyle than a career.
Yeah.
Being in the restaurant food industry, it doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. It's not a 8-hour day with a 30-minute break.
Right.
And that's the type of person I've always been. I'm kind of on the go, moving and grooving, and again, just watching him and schmoozing with the waitresses, the customers, popping down at the bar, having a few with especially with the football game on, and
right.
get a little action on the game going. He was a great guy.
Now, you've had a long life, a long career in the restaurant biz, in the hospitality biz.
I did.
Was there a point in your life where you thought, hey, look, I'm doing what I always wanted to do. I'm being the Bob Kerwood part that I wanted to be?
To a certain extent, yeah. I mean, I've never owned my own restaurant.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I love the industry.
Right.
I actually got out of it for a long time. 'Cause I had kids.
Right.
And it's not necessarily a conducive atmosphere, life for a wife and kids.
Right.
So I got out of it and worked for my father for about 10 years. So the kids got older, and then I got back into it.
That's great. And what were you doing for your dad?
He owned a real estate construction company here in Rhinebeck.
Okay.
Euell Real Estate, residential real estate. Did some spec house building, some construction. So yeah, I got into that for a while.
That sounds like completely different than the restaurant biz.
Absolutely. It was dull. It was boring. I didn't really enjoy it.
Uh-huh.
But like him to me, I got to be my kid's baseball coach, soccer
Right.
coach. Never missed a school play or a concert.
That's priceless.
Was always there on Christmas morning. Things that I wouldn't have been able to do if I had stayed in the chef industry.
Right. So how old were your kids when you took a decade off of being in that business?
My younger son, Ryan, I think, had just been born. So Jake probably would have been about 4-ish. So we're talking about, Ryan was born in 98, so we're about 99, 2000, probably when I got into it with my father.
Right. Okay. And you did that for a while. And then when you left real estate, how did you decide to go back? How did you decide to leave real estate and go back into the food?
Well, I've been thinking about it for a while, and then the whole country went into that almost depression there. My father's 65. He's ready to retire. I didn't see great things at that time staying in real estate and construction. The whole country is going through a very difficult economic and financial time. So it seemed like a good time to get out. I got back into working in some local restaurants, which is about when I realized I might be too old to be getting back into the restaurants. So I went to a place where, and I say this jokingly, where all old chefs go to die.
Oh, no way.
It's called corporate dining.
Oh, God.
So I work for a company called Compass Group.
So you say too old, but if I'm doing the math right, you're like 36 or something?
Around 40.
Right.
It's a young man's game, though. You know, you're
Right.
talking 12, 14-hour days on your feet. And like I said to you earlier, it's not a career, it's a lifestyle.
Right.
You know, it's not, if you get off work at 5 o'clock, hypothetically, you can go to the mall, you can grab some dinner with your girlfriend or wife, go to a movie.
Right.
You get out of work at 10 o'clock at night, there's only one thing to do, and that's go to a bar.
Right.
So again, you know, not the most conducive situation when you have a wife and 2 young kids at home, or 2 older kids at home.
So you had a wife and 2 medium older kids
Yeah.
at home, and you went back into the business. How did that play with the family?
You know, it was all right. You know, the kids were older at that point.
Right.
So, you know, I would, it really wasn't a problem, but it was taxing me. You know, I just didn't have the stamina for that anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, I came across Compass Group, which is one of the many companies out there that does what we call corporate dining.
Uh-huh.
They have, you know, different umbrellas. So for a while, I worked at the MasterCard headquarters down in Rhinebeck, and served and cooked for all their big executives, and they'd be bringing in the helicopters from the other executives from other companies and wine and dining and schmoozing. And from there, I moved on to the company I'm with now, which is they're called Lucent Group, and they manage mostly healthcare. They do some schools and colleges, but mostly schools and nursing homes, and I'm in the healthcare sector.
Okay.
And so I'm right where I want to be. I'm a regional director of food operations. You know, I'd go around to 12, 14 different accounts. See how they're doing.
Who are the accounts?
Nursing homes.
Okay.
You know, nursing homes I have from the Bronx up to Southern Columbia County. I have 12 different nursing homes. And, you know, I check out, are they hitting their budget? Are the residents happy? Are we following the recipes? Are we doing menu development? Are we giving them what they want? So, you know, a lot going on and moving and grooving.
Right. And what are your job responsibilities apart from just making sure they're doing okay?
Well, the biggest responsibility I probably have as I move through 12 different accounts with chefs and cooks and this and that is to have the enough self-control to not strangle anybody.
It's a prerequisite for the restaurant business.
That's number one. But yeah, it's really just to make sure that we're ready for any type of Board of Health inspection. The kitchens are clean. You know, we're following all the guidelines. The food is prepared properly, held at the correct temperatures. We're on budget.
Right.
You know, we have most of our line level employees are union, so I have to deal with some union rules and regulations, which
right
can always be fun.
And who's in charge of making sure that they're balanced meals? You're getting enough like nutrients and vitamins. And all
Well,
this
they
stuff.
all have a dietitian in place.
Okay.
So, you know, I'll work with a dietitian, make sure they get the right amount of caloric intake and vitamins, and we're not losing weight, we're not gaining too much weight. And then we have, you know, all the different types of menus for the different health problems, renal, you know, low sodium, heart healthy.
So do you see stats? You see metrics on individual
Sure.
homes? You're like, oh, look, this home, I put ice cream on the menu 8 times a day. This home's like gained 20 pounds. And
You'll see that a little bit sometimes. Yeah, you know, they do the metrics not daily like that. It's weekly and monthly. So, you know, 1 or 2 meals that you give them isn't going to sway the pendulum one way or another.
Right. Huh. And so when you see that, can you usually sort of go through the menu and say, oh, well, look, there's been more fatty, high-calorie stuff?
We can, yeah. We can start to, you know, trace back. You know, we'll watch weight gain and weight loss monthly, and we'll look at 6 month. And what we try to do every, 4 to 6 months is change our menu. So we look at the weights on like a 6 month basis, a monthly basis, see what type of swing it is.
Right.
And, you know, that'll help us a little bit.
Right.
You know, of course, the generation that's in there now, you know, if you gave them meatloaf and mashed potatoes every night, they'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, I'm raising my hand.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I'd
me
be
too.
Pretty
Yeah.
happy with that.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
we're
mind-
almost there.
Would mind I'm closer than you. So are there specific things that the people in those homes request more than any other thing?
You know, it's the little things is what they request. Ice cream, like you mentioned, chocolate chip cookies, the things that we take for granted living at home, that at 10 o'clock at night, you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm pretty sure there's some Oreos downstairs. I'm going to go downstairs and eat those Oreos. Those little things, those freedoms that we have, they don't really have too much.
Right.
So I think those little things go a long way with the senior citizen population in a nursing home or an assisted living.
Right. Huh. That's why I don't keep Fritos and Oreos in my house.
Right.
So I won't go downstairs at midnight and eat that crap. So back to high school.
Yeah.
You weren't always in Rhinebeck, right? You were in. Your kid told me you were in.
No, high school I was all Rhinebeck. I moved to Rhinebeck. I started sixth grade.
Did he say Carmel?
So I grew up. I was born in Parkchester, section of the Bronx.
Oh, okay.
Left there. We lived in Carmel for a short period of time when I was in fifth grade, and then after fifth grade, we moved up here to Rhinebeck, and I started sixth grade.
Nice. And how did your folks decide to go from the Bronx to Carmel to Rhinebeck?
Well, Rhinebeck, we already was in our lives. My grandparents bought property here in the 1950s, and then built a house late 50s and settled here for their retirement early 1960s.
Huh. Is that house still in the family?
No, it's not. It's still out there. You know, I'll go by it every now and then on Lamry Road. So that was what ultimately brought us to Rhinebeck.
Any idea why the grandparents chose Rhinebeck?
I really don't.
Were they from the Bronx?
Yeah. My whole family's from the Bronx. Yeah.
That's funny. So you were born there. You lived
Bronx Catholic Irish.
Bronx Catholic Irish.
The whole family. Yep.
That's good. So you have siblings, I'm guessing?
I don't, believe it or not.
What kind of Catholic Irish is that?
I know, right? Crazy.
Yeah.
But I do come from a pretty big family, and a lot of them stereotypically are New York City cops and firemen. And as you know my son Jake.
Yeah.
Who's been working as the manager at the Millbrook Winery the last 6-7 years.
Right.
Just recently left to follow his true calling, I guess. He's going to the fire academy right now. He's about halfway through the 14-week process.
That's great.
And he got a job with Poughkeepsie's Fairview Fire Department.
Oh, good.
So he's excited.
That's fabulous. Good for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have another kid?
My son Ryan.
And what is he doing?
Ryan is front desk manager of the Stonebridge Inn in Snowmass, Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds fancy.
Rough life, yeah.
Yeah. And how did he get out there? That's quite a hike.
Well, how he got out there was he's a very talented athlete. So he went to a private college on scholarship for soccer. Did 2 years. And after his 2 years said, listen, I still love soccer, but this getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to practice and then hit the weight room and then go to class and then go back to practice, I don't think I want it for me at that level. I think I'll always still play, but, because he originally thought about maybe going pro or trying to go pro.
Right.
So I said, all right, no problem. So what do you think? He goes, I think I'm going to come home and look at some other colleges and, see what maybe my plan might be. I said, all right. One condition, I support what you're looking to do, but you're not going to lay on my couch and find yourself. At this time, I think he would have been about 19-ish.
Right.
And I said, why don't you pick a place where you think you might want to be temporarily or for a long time. In my old chef days, I might have some contacts there, and let's see what we can do. So he had just gotten into snowboarding a few years earlier, so he started talking about Aspen. I used to be the chef at the Jerome Hotel in Aspen, Colorado. Made a couple of phone calls. I got him a job out there, and that was 6 years ago, and he's still out there and living very happily.
That's great.
Yeah.
And how long were you out there?
I was only out there for a year.
Uh-huh.
When you're a young chef, which I was at the time.
How old do you reckon?
probably 23-ish, right around there.
Kid.
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah.
And the best thing you can do is get a culinary education. I went to CIA and I graduated, but then to get out there and move around the country, even move around the world, and see different cuisines, work with different chefs, and really find your niche. So I worked up in Boston for a little while. I worked at the Greenbrier in White Sulphur Springs,
Nice.
Jockey Club in Florida, Mr. B's in New Orleans,
Wow.
and then out to Aspen.
This sounds like a blast. I'm guessing you were single at that point in time.
At that point, I was.
And so was it easy? And were you a chef or a sous chef or a cook or?
I say it all the time, and I'm sure we'll get into it later because I know it's some stuff you want to talk about. I did a lot of coaching here in Rhinebeck.
Right.
And I would tell kids all the time, if you don't know what you want to do, there's no problem with that. Get a job in food service. Get a job in a restaurant. You can see the whole world. No matter where you go, there's going to be a restaurant hiring. It's a great industry for someone young. And it is, like I said earlier, it's definitely a young man's sport. It's why I'm not doing it anymore in the restaurants. But it's a great life. It's good money. You have a lot of fun. You meet some real characters.
I'll bet.
You work your way across the country or around the world.
So was the Colorado gig immediately following the CIA?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was.
And so how? So you finished? Is it 2 years the program with the CIA?
Yeah.
Which is, really well respected program.
Yeah.
Did this place in Colorado sort of come recruiting at the CIA?
No, like I said, I was still kind of young, and I had some ideas of where I wanted to go. I was lucky enough to work at the Greenbrier, had a connection to get me in there. It's a world-renowned resort. As a matter of fact, when I was there, I think it was 91, I prepared dinner for the entire Bush family.
Nice.
They were there, and all the Secret Service bumbling through the kitchen. It was kind of weird.
Are you a golfer?
I was.
Okay.
And still am.
Right.
I don't play as much these days, but yeah. So I played a little bit of golf out on the course there.
Right.
Yeah.
That must have been gorgeous.
It was awesome, and it was great too. I lived on the grounds. The friend that got me the job, his name was Todd Stoner, and let me tell you, he lived up to that last name.
That's so funny.
But his dad, Rodney, was the food and beverage director for the Greenbrier. He also sat on the board at the culinary. So that's how I got the job there.
Love that. So did you? Was the course open to employees on like Mondays or a certain day of the week?
I don't remember, but again, hanging out with the son of the vice president of food and beverage definitely had its perks, and we decided to play golf. They were cool with it.
And what kind of scores were you turning in at that point in time?
We were in the woods much more than the fairway. Yeah,
Okay.
We weren't really keeping score.
Right, smart.
Yeah. It was a day off. A couple beers.
Sure.
Out on the golf. We had more fun on the golf court than with the golf cart than the actual golf course.
So that was summers during CIA or during other college?
Yeah, it would have been. I think I got there around August, and I worked through the holidays. And then Mr. Stoner knew the chef, Jock, down at Mr. B's Bistro.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, Mardi Gras was coming, and he was recruiting. So he asked Todd and I if I'd be interested in going to Mardi Gras, or not to Mardi Gras, but to New Orleans to work. We looked at each other and kind of laughed that, yeah, we'll take that gig.
because the other resort wasn't enough of a party.
Yeah, 2 23-year-old guys, single. You want us to come work in New Orleans during Mardi Gras? Yeah, okay, we're in.
And so did they have lodging for you too, or you landed
and had to find a place? It depends on how you define lodging. We were down in the basement in this little bunk that you ever watch MASH?
Yeah.
And those guys lived in the swamp, they called it.
Yeah.
That's like what this basement area that we lived in
was really
like.
Hit a canvas cot?
Yeah. The only thing that smelled worse than where we lived was early morning going out, walking down Bourbon Street.
Oof. I'll bet.
Yeah.
And that's that's a party town 365 days a year,
Yes.
right? So were you there for 1 or 2 Mardi Gras as well?
No.
Oh.
No. I only stayed for about 4 months. And Todd and I had a moment of clarity and felt it's time to go.
Todd Stoner.
Yeah.
And So you're following a guy named Stoner
Yeah, exactly.
around the country.
And let me tell you, he drove a 74 VW bus
Oh, geez.
in mint condition.
Where is Todd Stoner now?
We lost touch with each other. We reconnected. We both went to Aspen together, too.
Uh-huh.
And I lost touch with him, which is kind of a shame. I've looked around Facebook, but, you put in a name like Todd Stoner, you think it's original. There's like 100. And I was like, I don't know which one this guy could possibly be at this point.
Right. There's probably not that many Terry Euells.
I'm sure if I wanted to try, I could probably find it through the culinary.
Yeah, it'd be funny. And are you in touch with many friends from that era or earlier?
No, I'm really not.
Right.
Yeah. It's a really, the culinary is, I made some friends there, I hung out.
Right.
But it's very competitive at the same time. You're all going for the same thing, and you want the same thing.
And what was the thing that everybody wanted? I mean, it wasn't to like go to Colorado and like
I
cook it.
think what most of them wanted was to be, the next media chef, the next big time chef,
right.
On the picture of Bon Appetit.
And did you have thoughts that you'd like to do that?
No. I can't. It's funny. People ask why you got into being a chef.
Yeah.
And it's different than why you got into being a cook.
Right.
So most people say I became a chef because I had a real passion and love for food. And I would say that I would agree with that. That's why I became a chef. But by the time I decided to be a chef, I'd already been cooking for, 5, 10 years. So, what made me be a cook in the beginning it was the only job I could think of where I could drink till 4 o'clock in the morning, sleep till 11 in the morning, and not be late for work because I was a PM cook.
Smart.
So I would start my day at 1 in the afternoon, work till 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Smart and economical.
Yeah.
And so when you were a kid, when you were younger, did you cook for your family?
I did a little bit, yeah. Breakfast. I used to do a lot of breakfast cooking when I was a young kid.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what about your folks? Which one of them was the cook?
Neither.
Oh.
Yeah.
So did the family order pizza a lot?
A lot of pizza. And it's funny. I can remember when we were still living in Parkchester, a big Friday night with my dad would come home from work. It'd be payday. And you have a pizza and an RC and a bottle of RC Cola.
Oh, boy.
I had never even heard of like Coke or Pepsi back then yet.
Right.
RC Cola was the big thing.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Because I don't even think you can find that on the East
I don't even know
Coast
if it
anymore.
exists anymore.
Yeah. It definitely exists,
Yeah.
but I'm not
But
sure.
it's amazing I'm a chef because I came from two very Irish parents who couldn't cook
right.
worth anything.
And if they did cook, there probably weren't a lot of spices.
Like, you know what I call ketchup? Irish gravy. Because if you put enough ketchup on it,
Yeah.
you can get it down.
So the folks just never cooked?
No, they cooked. It was just horrible.
Right. That's so fun. So when is the first time, if you can recall, where you ate something and you're like, what the fuck? This is amazing.
I think the first time that I really started thinking about being a chef and creative, I got a job working at the Beekman Arms, and I became very good friends with the executive chef there. His name was Kevin Cromwell at the time, and I was living the cook lifestyle, and he was much older. He was probably in his 40s at the time. I was 20s. And, I think he saw that I had an interest and kind of a knack for it, but maybe also saw that if I continued the road I was on, that good things might not happen. So he kind of took me under his wing a little bit and, really got me interested in creating food. And back then, much different from now, it's not a shot, the culinary. Get into the culinary is very difficult. You had to have 5 years, if not more, of cooking experience. You had to have a letter of recommendation from a graduate, not just a chef. It had to be a graduate of the culinary. So he was really the guy who got me into the culinary.
So he was a graduate. And
Yeah, he was a graduate. Yeah.
Wow. And you had the experience. So what were some of the dishes he made that you really liked?
Well, he did this one dish, and I still make it to this day. It's a full chicken breast, skin on, with a spinach and lobster stuffing.
Oh, boy.
And he used to do this like pepper sauce with it. It was incredible. It was really good. And then, of course, working at the Greenbrier and the Jerome Hotel, which is exposing me to all kinds of different foods, like out west, cooking with elk saddle and moose and black bean bison chili.
But what were some of the other dishes from your youth where you had it, you're like, oh, God, I need to figure out how to make that?
As a young chef, I think you just look at, it's building blocks. So, and I know this is going to sound crazy, something else that I still make a lot that I remember thinking, wow, how simple but ingenious. He did this filet mignon, as a pan-seared filet mignon, on a potato veggie pancake. And the potato veggie pancake was just, how you would typically make a potato pancake. You put it, you grate the potato.
Right.
But then with julienne carrots and red onion and zucchini and squash and some Asiago cheese, a little bit of egg, a little bit of heavy cream in there, and mixed it all together. And sometimes what sounds so simple is just so good.
Right.
And just, again, you think to yourself, I never would have thought, at least at that stage of my career, to take something like vegetables and potatoes and put them together.
Right.
So, little things like that. It's a building block.
It's not the Irish way, is it?
No.
That's funny. So what were some of the, I just wanted to stay here for a second because it's fascinating. What were some of the spices that you were, because when I think of, Irish and English food, I'm like, oh, right, sometimes they have salt.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. What were some of the spices you were exposed to as a young cook? We were like, what? That's amazing.
Yeah, I think when you think herbs and spices, I think, at least for me now and even back then, you think of kind of like the Mexican and the Spanish influences, cumin and paprikas and chili powders, things that have very distinctive flavors. The Italian spices, the basils, oreganos, things of that nature.
Right.
But, for me, as I continue to move forward in my career, I stayed away from a lot of the spices, and I like to use the herbs and create marinades. And that's really how I try to develop flavors when I was still a working chef.
Nice.
Instead of just making something, put a little bit of garlic, a little salt, a little pepper, put together some type of marinade with some oil, some lemon, some fresh herbs, cover it, just let it sit for a day or two.
Oh, boy.
And then bring it out and cook it up.
I'm officially drooling now. That sounds good. So you cooked for your kids, I'm guessing, when they were growing up.
A little bit, and it's like anything, when you do something for a living, you don't necessarily want to do it when you come home.
No.
The barbecue season was really when I would cook for the family.
Oh, nice.
I like to be out on the grill and you're in a hot kitchen all day. And, in the winter time when you're working as a chef, you might not even see daylight for a while.
Right.
Because by the time you get in there and then leave, it's dark.
So then their mom did a lot of the cooking.
Yes, she did.
Cooking. And what were some of her dishes that you especially loved?
Well, that's funny, too, because when Wendy and I first started out together, she was a horrible cook. She would just make she would say chicken surprise. I'm like, well, what is that? She goes, I don't know, there's some chicken and stuff in there, and we used to kid her around all the time. Again, and I don't want to get too stereotypical about me being Irish, but I love potatoes, I love bread, I love a roll with my dinner. So, and she knew that. So she would get those Pillsbury crescent rolls or the Pillsbury,
which are so good.
But then she'd always burn the bottoms.
Oh, God.
And we call them black bottom rolls.
Black bottom rolls.
As opposed to fat bottom girls.
Yeah.
Because we all know that song.
Yeah.
But it was black bottom rolls. If Jake's listening to this, he's laughing his ass off right now.
That's good. I hope he is.
Because that was our thing. It was, are we having black bottom rolls for dinner tonight?
Yeah, and you kind of have to try to burn those things.
Yeah, but again, it's like anything, if you do it enough. She's a fantastic cook now.
That's great.
She really is. I mean, she's great.
And did she go to Rhinebeck High School as well?
No, she's from Manchester, New Hampshire.
Oh, so how did you all meet?
Lift line in Aspen, Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Met on the lift line, and we kind of hung out skiing. Never thought I'd see her again. When I first moved to Aspen, before I moved into employee housing, I was staying at this hostel called the St. Moritz. She just happened to be staying in the same one. So I went back to the hostel that night after I'd already met her. And I'm sitting in my room, me and a couple other guys. There's like 2 bunk beds in each room. And I hear this girl coming down, knocking on every door. Hey, a bunch of us are going out. We're going to Cooper Street Bar tonight, knocking on the next. Hey. And I'm thinking to myself, I know that voice, but how can I know that voice? Because I just got here. So as soon as she got to our door, I opened it, and it was her. And I said, I'll go. And we've been together ever since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it was what, like 93 or so, 94?
Right around there, yeah.
Right.
I could tell you our first Christmas together would have been 94, I think. Yeah. Because we had those Hallmark year balls, you know.
Oh, nice.
And that's our first one.
And so every year you get a new ball and hang it on the Christmas tree?
Yeah.
And 94 was the first ball?
Our first one, yeah.
So you met during the wintertime, I'm guessing. Was
Yes.
it like January, February, March?
Yeah, I think it was right around October.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So early in the ski season.
Yeah.
So you met in October, and by December, you're like trimming a Christmas tree together.
Mm-hmm.
So that moved pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's good. And then kids followed shortly after that?
Very shortly.
Oh, geez. Don't make me do that timeline. But that's amazing. And what was she doing out there?
She had come out with 4 friends, just traveling around. You know, she had turned 21 when she was out there. This was before we met, so she was already 21 when I met her.
Robbing the cradle.
Yeah, I guess I was.
Yeah.
Smart, aren't I?
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, it happened quick, no doubt about it.
And then, so it happened.
So I don't know how fast you can do math in your head, but we met in 94. Jake's 29. It's 2025.
Yeah. No, I'm not doing that math because as is the tradition here, and correct me if I'm wrong, you brought a cocktail for us to enjoy.
Absolutely.
And it just hit my math center.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No more.
Gotcha.
No further math in this interview. So you met out there, you fell in love.
Yeah.
And you got busy, and you moved from there to where?
Well, so, you know, we were just 2 young kids being crazy out there, living a great life, partying. And it's expensive to live out there.
I'll bet.
So for a while, we couldn't even afford rent, and she had a van, and we lived in her van for like 3 or 4 weeks in the middle of winter in Aspen,
geez.
Colorado.
Love that. A Volkswagen van?
No, it was an old Dodge,
Right.
70s.
But it had a mattress in the back and stuff?
Yeah, we had a little heater in the back, and, you know, we had our clothes and some blankets, and we went to the gym and to shower and do what we had to do. On payday, if we were feeling, you know, generous, we'd get a hotel room maybe.
Right.
And, you know, really live it up and
Clean
sleep in a
sheets,
real bed.
Clean sheets, baby.
Right on.
So at some point, living in the Dodge van there, you found out you were in a family way.
Yep.
How did that go down with everybody?
Well, you know, obviously we had the talk that you would normally have, and
You hadn't talked.
no, Wendy and I, yeah, we you know, we decided, you know, listen, we love each other, and you know, the timing might not be great because
Right.
we're living in a van.
Right.
So this is when I made, I think it's the last horrible phone call home. Hi, Mom. How are you? Listen, thinking about moving back east. Met a girl. We're wondering if we can crash with you guys for a little while till we get settled. And, by the way, she's pregnant. We're going to leave probably tomorrow and probably get there in like 3 or 4 days. How's that sound to you?
I'm hearing the screeching brakes on the other end of the line with Mom.
But I have to say, my parents were really cool about it. They were, you know,
Typical Irish Catholics.
At first, my mother was a little like, "Oh my God."
Right.
But yeah, you know, she was made to be grandma. My mother.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
What a treat. So you moved home. You drove the van, I'm
Yep.
guessing.
Yeah, we drove back.
And you said goodbye to your stoner friend.
We did say goodbye to Todd.
Yeah. And that's when you sort of lost touch with Todd Stone.
Yeah.
Right. Huh. So you drove back east to your folks' house. It takes a few days to make
Well,
that
actually,
drive.
you know, I have to correct. We didn't drive back in the van because we let her friend have the van. So this is another funny story of getting back home. At that time, I told you I was living a bit of a crazy lifestyle. So the state of New
don't
York,
say.
before I moved to Colorado, felt it was to the best interest of everybody that I no longer have a driver's license.
In their infinite wisdom.
In their infinite wisdom.
Yeah.
And when he got in a little trouble in Aspen, Colorado, and didn't have a driver's license, so one of the guys from the culinary who was out there on his extern had to drive back, but he lost his license too. But he had his car out there, so he didn't know what to do. I said, hey, man, Wendy and I want to go back east. I live in Rhinebeck. You need to get to Hyde Park. We'll drive your car. He goes, great. You guys have the licenses? I'm like, oh, yeah, no problem. So we cannonballed across country in this kid's car with him sitting in the back, and neither one of us had a driver's license.
Jackie Gleason and Burt Reynolds. So, but you had the physical license. It was just expired. If anybody.
Oh, no, it was taken away by
Confiscated.
a judge, yeah.
Oh, jeez. So did you, I'm guessing you didn't get pulled over.
No, thank God.
You kept that car right on the speed limit.
Yeah, we got him. He lived in Atlantic City.
Boy.
So we drove to Atlantic City, and we got our bags, and we got on Amtrak to Penn Station to Rhinecliff, to my parents' house.
You
We're home.
were home. Did they know that you had lost your driver's license?
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, I think they picked up one of the attorney fees for me.
oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, they're good parents.
I was going to ask, it sounds like they're pretty cool,
Oh, yeah.
right? And lots of parents, especially in that era, not pretty cool. My
That
folk,
era, I don't know.
My folks would have had a
it's
connection.
I don't know. You're a young kid. You're Irish. You live in a small town. It's almost a rite of passage. You get a DWI, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't live in a small town. But yeah, no, I mean, my parents would have hit the freaking roof.
Yeah. Well, it depends. Probably the first couple of times I got into some trouble, they hit the roof. But I mean, my parents have probably received phone calls from law enforcement agencies in at least 10 different states over the years. And I don't want to make it out like I'm a criminal or a bad guy. I just
Because that's how it's
fun.
coming across.
Yeah, I had fun.
Yeah, that's good. And so it seems like you still have some fun, but
yeah.
not to excess.
Right.
Right. When did that change?
That's a good
Your
question.
life turned from I can't have enough fun to that's enough fun.
I think that was definitely part of it. It was the family, and it's trying to bring it down a notch or two.
Right.
And age and wisdom, and you get a little wiser, you get a little smarter, you get a little older and move a little slower, and
Right.
it's a combination of a lot of different things.
And were you ever in a car and you tried to outrun the cops?
Never.
Never. That's good.
Maybe once.
Now that you mention it,
Yeah, maybe
just
once.
that one time.
Yeah, here in Rhinebeck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that cop still on the job?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Was
And
it
I remember
was it in
him
the last?
saying, and we knew each other.
Was it Scattergood?
No, it was Steve Hannenberg.
Uh-huh.
And he was young. I was still in high school. I was a senior in high school, so he was very young on the force.
Right.
And I had this blue van, and we'd all just come back from skiing, and we had been having some fun. And I was driving by the mini park, and I think I was speeding, and he did a U-turn, and I was like, this is not going to be good, and I punched it. And I got down a little bit farther on like Mulberry Street, and he finally caught up to me, and I pulled over, and he goes, Terry, are you trying to outrun me? I was like, no. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
I didn't even know you were behind me.
Yeah.
That's when it was good to live in a small town.
right. So you got off with a warning?
Yeah.
And not even, were you under the influence of something?
Maybe.
Your kids might be listening.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe's a good answer.
Yeah.
Super solid answer. So you got off with a warning.
Yes.
The guy smelled your breath or not and said, listen, you go straight home. Don't pass go.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And do you think that was that doesn't sound like that was the point where you sort of stopped saying I want more fun and started?
Oh,
saying,
yeah, no, that was. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just thrown that question out. Have you ever been in a high-speed chase? And at first I was like, no. I was like, oh, wait. What was that one time? It's not really a high-speed chase, a couple blocks down Mulberry Street.
Well, the grid
If
part
those
of
stop
Rhinebeck,
signs hadn't been there, maybe I could have gotten away. I don't know.
Well, those straight streets, it's a bad place to sort of try and lose a cop.
Probably.
Yeah. Huh. So let's go back to you working as a cook and a busboy and a server and stuff at Foster's.
Yeah.
How did you get that job at first?
Rob Kerwood.
Oh,
Rob and
okay.
I are the same age.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So
Oh, he's-
Rob
he's-
was the employee agency for the kitchen.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. All the dishes, all the dishwashers, the line cooks, everyone was.
And is he bartending there now?
Rob, no, I'm trying to think. He was the Colony bartender for a while. Then he was down at the Post. Is that where he is now? The Rhine Cellar?
Ryan
yeah.
Cellar. Oh, okay.
Great guy, Rob Kerwood.
Yeah, super nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I first met him. Where was he?
Very witty guy, like his dad.
Dry.
But so was Bob. So was
Yeah.
Mr. K. Yeah.
Now, Bob Kerwood Sr.
Yeah.
When I moved here from Woodstock, and I was friends with some restaurateurs over there, and they were all like, "Oh, Bob Kerwood was the best. He had like racing days and gambling in the basement." And
Oh, yeah.
And one of the guys, Peter Cantine, my friend over there, who ran a place called The Bear, was just the greatest host I'd ever met. And he said, "No, I'm nothing compared to
No,
Kerwood."
you're right. Yeah. Bob, he was just a very charismatic guy. And
Right.
you had to like. Here's a great story, a Bob Kerwood story. Like I said, I used to work there in my high school years. And, it was a busy restaurant. And Mr. K would get a little crazy sometimes in the kitchen, And if you did something wrong, he would sometimes would kind of flip out. And I remember like one Wednesday night, he flipped out on me. He's like, "Euell, you're fired. Get out of here." And I'm a young kid. I was like, "Oh my God," you're almost in tears. You leave and you go home. And this was when, and Friday night the phone rings. I'm still living at home, obviously. I'm in high school. Mom goes, "Terrence, it's Mr. Kerwood." Oh my God. I go, "Hello?" And he goes, "Hey, kid, you're on the schedule tonight. Where are you?" I'm like, "You fired me Wednesday." Come on. Let it. Water under the bridge, kid. We need you. Get in here. Okay. Hung up the phone and said, "Ma, can you drive me to Foster's?" So that was.
And do you know why you got fired?
Nah, not really.
Right.
But that was just how it was. It was okay. It was.
Right.
He'll probably call in a few days and have you come back. But getting back to the host part of them, Kentucky Derby Day.
Right.
That was Bob Kerwood's day, man. He would have the pink shirt and the green jacket on, and he'd wear a whistle. He'd have like a referee whistle,
right?
And he'd be walking around, calling your attention to the next race starting, and it was
that.
Great.
And do you have any days like that in your life, in your house?
No.
Any sort of like yearly traditions?
Nothing like that.
Where you wear the pink shirt and put on the whistle?
No. But Foster's back in those days, it was just a lot of fun. He was a great guy.
Right.
Sundays, football Sundays at Foster's, that was a place to be. It'd be 12 noon, and the bar would be full and 3 deep.
Right.
Yeah.
Love that. So you were in high school. You said your mom gave you a ride there. So you're like a sophomore. You're 14, 15.
Yeah, I started there either 8th or 9th grade.
Wow. Huh. So what was that? I just had the question I wanted to ask you. Oh, geez, I don't know. Oh, yeah. So you're playing baseball for Rhinebeck at that point in time?
Yeah, I played baseball and soccer.
Okay. And what position did you play in baseball?
Second base.
I think your kid told me you went to college on a baseball scholarship.
I did play some ball for college.
Second base. That's a high pressure position.
Yeah.
And when did you start playing baseball?
Oh, geez, I don't know.
American,
yeah.
American kid. You always played.
My dad was a great athlete too.
Uh-huh.
He played semi-pro ball for the New York Giants.
Oh, wow.
Big football player.
Oh, football.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to ask about that. I saw because I found online your dad's obituary.
Yes.
I'm sorry he passed.
Thank you.
And it said that he was a lifelong Giants fan.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw somewhere else online, maybe it was actually your boy told me, you've been a lifelong Jets fan.
I am.
How
Yes.
did that play with the old man?
He was fine with it. Yeah.
And,
yeah.
and why did you defect?
Well, I grew up toward the tail end of the Joe Namath days.
How could you not love
Broadway Joe?
Broadway Joe, yeah.
And I think at some point every kid likes to distance himself a little bit from dad.
Right.
We're both huge Yankee fans.
This was your rebellion.
But yeah.
Right. And so since you've been a Jets fan, how are they doing?
They suck.
And
There's nothing more stressful than, I don't care what you do for a living, for a job, there's nothing more stressful than being a Jet fan. and what's the worst part about it, it's so predictable. So 2 years ago, opening day for the Jets, I'm sitting on the couch with Jake, and I said, watch this.
is he a Jets fan too?
Yeah. First snap, Aaron Rodgers gets injured and he's out for the season. Sure enough, first snap, and he's out for the, and I said, and Jake and I, we just looked at it. We weren't surprised. You could have written that script a month before it happened. It's just,
And why is that? Are you a superstitious person?
very.
Oh. So is there some sort of curse of the Bambino for...
I don't know what it is about the Jets. I really don't. It's just, they just can't do it.
Uh-huh. When's the last time they did do it?
69.
So that's Joe Namath.
With Joe Namath.
Right.
That's the year I was born. So I've never seen the Jets in the Super Bowl. I think I've only seen them in playoff games 2 or 3 times.
And so what do you think? You said you're superstitious. What do you think it might be?
It's funny. I don't look at it as superstition.
Okay.
I think, some companies, the Jets being a company, it's a business,
Right. Yeah, big
just
business.
don't hire the right people. The one thing the Jets have never really had, maybe once or twice, is good coaching. They had the Tuna for a little while,
The Tuna.
and I can't think of his name. Jeez. Then he went to coach the Giants.
Right. And did he do better when he was coaching the Giants?
Yes. Yeah, I think, yes, definitely.
And yet still it's the coach's fault.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in sports, it always has to come back to the coach at some point.
Right. And you did a bunch of coaching in your life, right?
Yes, yeah.
Did you coach baseball, football, soccer?
Baseball and soccer.
Okay. And I'm guessing you coached Rhinebeck.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Right. And your kids played
Both sports, yep.
Right.
Yep. Jake kind of phased out of baseball when he got into his high school years. He got into track and field.
Okay.
Ryan stayed with baseball.
Uh-huh. So it was Jake's rebellion.
I guess so. Yeah, you could throw that maybe, yeah.
And what position did Ryan play?
Ryan played shortstop and pitcher.
Okay. That's good. Shortstop right up there with a high pressure.
Ryan was a good
position.
athlete. Jake was a good athlete. It's funny. Jake was a type of athlete and even student that he was good, but he had to work hard at being good.
Right.
My son Ryan, if he had never played a sport before and you just gave him the ball, he was awesome at it.
Yeah, I've got a kid like that.
Yeah, don't you hate those kids?
All the other kids do. They're like, oh, she's so talented.
Yeah, he was. He was just a talented
And
athlete.
so what were some of the highlights of your coaching career? Were you the coach when they won state?
I never coached the varsity level.
Okay.
So what I did, and when I came back to Rhinebeck, Ron Keefe, who was the boys varsity soccer coach when I was in high school, was still the boys varsity soccer coach. And he'd approached me and he said, would you be interested in coaching? And I kind of laughed because I wasn't sure if he was serious. I said, Ron, you've known me for a long time. You really want me to coach? He goes, you're exactly what I need. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, these kids right now, they are soft. I said, I need someone like you. And what I want to do is put you with what they call the modified program,
right.
which was 7th and 8th graders. I said, I need someone to start to build the team. who can, kind of get these kids, light a little fire into these kids and
Right.
and make them understand what they're playing for.
Right. So you came back here like 25 or so.
Yeah.
And he hadn't seen you in like 7 or so years.
Yep.
But still, he had this idea of you.
Yeah, we met up again. When I first came back, I joined the Lions Club.
Okay.
And I was the I forget the term they give it. Your job is to bring people in, the recruiter or whatever.
Right.
So he was one of the guys that I approached.
Membership.
To come and join the club. So we were just chit chatting, and that's the night the conversation came up, and I thought it was crazy at first, but yeah, it was fun. I had a lot of fun doing it.
So he asked, you said yes.
Yeah.
And you did that for a long time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think I coached the modified boys probably at least 12 years, if not longer. They weren't consecutive, though. I got in a little trouble a couple of times.
Oh, you did? Oh, let's hear about that.
Well, let's say, I grew up in a time where things, like you,
Yeah.
things are a little different,
Yeah.
and
A
so
lot different.
So I can't understand when it comes to sports how you can be okay with losing,
Right.
and that was my approach to coaching. That you're going to lose. Nobody wins all the time.
Right.
And when you lose, it's important to take that and figure out, why did we lose? What did I do wrong? What did we do wrong as a team? What do
Right.
we have to do to fix it? That's all important stuff.
Seems logical.
Yeah. But the being okay with losing was something that I just couldn't accept.
Interesting.
So, sometimes I said some things to the boys that they were okay with and they understood, but it would make its way back to mom or dad. And, mom or dad would pick up the phone and call the school. And I had a lot of sit downs with Ron Keefe, with Joe Phelan, with a couple different principals at the school about some of the tactics I was using during my coaching days.
What were these tactics, pray tell?
Well, the one in particular was we went up and we played Tannersville, Hunter,
Yeah.
and they were horrible, and they beat us 4-2.
Oh.
So at halftime, I said, you guys need to hike up your skirts a little bit and go out there in the second half and play like some men. And this was my halftime speech, and a parent, I think, heard that. And because that's exactly when I went in to meet with the Section 9 person for Rhinebeck High School. I can't remember the guy's name, what a weirdo he was. He said, he called me into his office, and he goes, so I have to ask you, apparently you were questioning the sexuality of some of the guys on your team.
God.
I said, what? He goes, you were questioning the sexuality? I said, I have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Did you make a statement you have to hike up your skirts and play like a man? I said, oh, yeah, I absolutely did. He goes, well, you can't do that. And I said, why? And he really didn't have an answer for that. And then he went into some mumbo jumbo, and I finished the season being a coach. I wasn't asked to come back the next year, but the next year the team was horrible. So the year after that, the athletic director came back and brought me back. And that's how it went for a little while.
On and off. Well, it was an interesting thing because it's sort of straddling eras. The era of like, no, you can't tell the boys they're behaving like girls.
Yeah.
You can't, use, you're being any female thing is a derogatory. You can't do it. And, 10 years prior to that, this is all anybody did, and nobody thought anything about it. So it's an interesting thing to sort of straddle those eras and get in trouble for it.
And especially, and the other thing I would say all the time is, I went to 2 colleges. I graduated high school. So the most important life lessons I ever learned, I learned on the athletic field, not in a classroom. And so I coached the way I was coached when I was a young kid. And I had some rough coaches. I can remember.
Yeah, because they were an even earlier
Yeah,
era.
I can remember coming home from a soccer game in high school, and we lost. And the coach didn't think we should have lost. We'd already played a full game. We get back to Rhinebeck, and he made us run a mile on the track.
Oof. That's going to motivate you to do better next time.
Well, there's lessons there,
Right.
and everyone's a little bit different, but there's lessons there.
Right. So I mentioned straddling eras, and you've been in Rhinebeck a long, long time.
Yeah.
You came here in middle school. Or
Yeah, it would have been 81, 82, I think.
what do you think the big changes have been in Rhinebeck from the time you moved here?
Well, obviously, population growth.
Right.
And I think with population growth, speaking of Rhinebeck, and you can take this and put it into any area, you start to lose, in my opinion, a sense of community. You asked me early on, and I'm not sure if we really talked about it too much, why we moved from Parkchester, what brought us to Rhinebeck.
Right.
And it was the same thing in Parkchester. There was a time, there was no Grand Union. And in our neighborhood, there was no Grand Union or A&P or ShopRite.
Right.
It was Christini's was the grocery store. Ralph's, Butcher's Market. That's where you went and got your meat.
Right.
It was Huey's Deli. Friday night pizza, you went to Tony's Pizza Place, and you knew them. Even though it was the Bronx, which is, there was that sense of, because it was neighborhoods.
Right.
It was that sense of community. And I think that's the biggest change that I've seen in Rhinebeck. IJ is gone. Van Heusen's is gone. Northern Dutchess Pharmacies, all those mom and pop
Back
places.
it up. What's IJ and Van Heusen's?
Van Heusen's was a butcher market, like a butcher shop in Rhinebeck. That's where Bread Alone is now. Is where Van Heusen's used to be. CVS used to be Kilmer's IGA grocery store.
Yeah, I remember that.
Fred
actually.
Kilmer owned that.
Yeah.
George and his father owned the Northern Dutchess Pharmacy.
Oh, right. I remember that too.
And then, of course, even the real estate, you had Battistoni real estate.
Yeah.
It was all, Fraley and, Mr. Fraley, and then Rackow, it became Fraley and Rackow real estate. So you start to lose that sense of community, I think.
Right.
That identity, that small townness. And what comes out of that, when you've got those small businesses, is volunteerism. And that's the other big thing I don't see as much.
Oh, that's funny.
I remember when we first moved to Rhinebeck, my father signed me up for Little League Baseball. And my father volunteered to be a coach.
Right.
And they said, well, thank you very much. That's great of you. But we're not looking for coaches. We have a wait list. Now,
Love that.
today, they're begging people to be coaches.
Right.
They're begging people to become firemen.
Yeah, it's funny for me to hear you say that because it's one of the things that I like about Rhinebeck is everybody I know volunteers like all the time, and it just makes me wonder like what different worlds we're living in.
I don't think we're in different worlds. I think again, it's relevant to what your background is.
Right.
So is Rhinebeck still an awesome place where there is volunteerism? I know the Great Lions Club.
Yeah.
There's great
Are you
organizations in
still
Rhinebeck.
involved with the Lions Club?
I kind of dropped out of that some years ago. I'm still great friends with all the guys
Right.
in the club, but it's just a little different.
Right.
And maybe this might piece it together a little bit for you.
Yeah.
So I don't remember what the years were, but Rhinebeck was starting to grow a little bit, and so were our sports programs. We needed a new soccer field. So what we did was we called up some people like Jeff Decker, Tom LeGrand, and
Excavators.
we just went out and made some soccer fields.
Right.
That's what we did. And then we rented a roller and rolled them. Now, that same situation, you got to go before the town board. There's got to be a seeker process.
Right.
Look at the soccer field. It's a beautiful field, the turf field.
Right.
That's down there now. The first meeting that ever happened about the possibility of that, I went to. Jake was 5 years old sitting next to me.
Right.
And this is the question I asked, because I already saw Rhinebeck changing. What are the chances my son, and I pointed to Jake, will have the opportunity to play on that field? And of course, all the local politicians, oh, we're going to have this. This isn't something we're thinking it's going to be a done deal. We're going to do it. And, next thing you know, there are arrowheads found or something weird going on. And it took 24 years.
Is that what it took, really?
About that. I think it's been there now, 2 years? The soccer field, I think,
or
2 years.
3, yeah.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years.
Lot, yeah.
So like I said, Jake was about 5. Ryan was still an infant.
Right.
I just started coaching in Rhinebeck, and I said, talking about a turf soccer field and expanding the baseball fields down there. Let's go to this meeting.
Right. So do you think when you retire, you will stay here?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I still kind of like it here. There's times that I'm like
glowing endorsement.
Well, and again, it's an awesome town.
Right.
But you have to understand, when I first came to, for me, it's different. I don't know how long you've been living here.
Not long.
But so your view of Rhinebeck is, let's say, the last 5 years. My view of Rhinebeck is the last 40.
Right.
So there's been a lot of change.
Sure.
And change isn't necessarily bad. I know there's that weirdness between the locals and the city people.
Right.
Yeah, I don't get involved. I'm from the city.
Right.
I'm one of them. But I do think we've lost our identity based on what it was, at least when I was a young kid.
Right. So how long do you think you need to be here to be a local?
I don't think I'm a local.
You don't feel like a local?
No.
But your grandparents were here for a long time before you all came up.
Yeah.
And
and I'm not even sure if there are locals anymore, because the true locals are either passing away or have passed away.
Right.
There's only a few families left that I would say there's like the McGuires.
Right.
I say, boy, there's some locals.
Where I'm thinking of the Battenfelds.
The Tumlos, the Rugies.
Right.
The Williams, Sandy's father started that business in
right.
I don't know what year, but those are the true locals to me.
Right. Even if they're like the children of the children of the children of the people who started that stuff. That's interesting to hear that you don't feel like you're really a local.
No, I don't. I still consider myself a city kid.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah.
A city kid. Well, thanks for coming here all the way from the Bronx.
We're done. That's it.
Well, we're overtime, actually.
Oh, are we?
But it's been so much fun talking with you.
Yeah, it's good. Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and thanks for bringing this drink. I'm ripped. And everybody else.
Well, that's because they're the Euell pour.
The Euell. I watched the Euell pour.
Yeah.
I thought, that'll be okay. Well, thanks for the Euell pour.
Well, I'm actually going to meet Wendy right now and go to Foster's and have a few more.
Oh, you are?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, that's good.
It's Friday.
And is this what you'll get at Foster's?
Absolutely.
Vodka and soda?
Yeah.
No fruit and soda. All right, listen, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a great Friday. Thanks for Terry Euell to be the fabulous guest. And everybody have a great weekend. Thanks to Jen Hammoud, producer extraordinaire.